Hey, hello everyone, welcome. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Ryan Nidek. I am the Leadership and Engineering Conference Chair for the Student Engineers Council here at Virginia Tech. You should all be able to see my screen. So tonight's event is called Entrepreneurship and Engineering, and we have some wonderful people here who are entrepreneurs who have started their own companies, all of engineering backgrounds, to tell you about their journey and how they got to where they are today. So I want to let, before we get started, everyone introduce themselves. So we'll go in the order on the bottom, starting with Brent.
Hey guys, Brent Dilley, chemical engineer, Virginia Tech class of 2008, co-founder of Tably, a restaurant technology company, and recent partner and co-founder of Premium PPE, a US mask producer of face masks.
Oh, and then Jordan, you can go next.
Sure. Hey everyone, Jordan Klein, the co-founder and CEO of Park and Diamond, and we make a collapsible bicycle helmet that fits in the shape of a water bottle and looks like traditional headwear, like a baseball hat. It's Virginia Tech ESM.
And hello, I'm Marcus Alzona, founder of Keys, which is a company that looks at innovations in sort of the federal research sector with public safety and focusing, well, on multiple items actually, and cybersecurity, geospatial, and mobility.
And good evening, everyone. I'm Ron Poff. I serve as an assistant professor of practice here at Virginia Tech in the Pamplin College of Business, and I teach in the entrepreneurship and innovation track. I have about 30 years in industry, mostly in entrepreneurship, working with inside organizations, but I did also start my own marketing agency about 5 years ago as well. So definitely excited to learn more about our panelists this evening, and I'm so glad that you all joined us. We'll go ahead and get started, from the introductions. And I also want to encourage the students to put some questions in the chat box. We've got a few questions just to sort of break the ice this evening. And I'm gonna start out with Brent on this first question. What skills from your engineering or computer science education helped you as an entrepreneur? So this is a great opportunity to promote the College of Engineering, right?
Yeah, as far as it helped me mostly in my early career when I was working for larger corporations, but from an entrepreneur perspective, I think just the problem solving capabilities and just like the logic driven problem solving in a really solid understanding of math and thereby financial information, I think was probably the most helpful. But definitely the problem solving experience was, I would say, was number one.
Okay. Jordan, what about your engineering education and how it helped you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, for us, it's really critical. I mean, primarily the IP around our business is in the area of material science. And so doing the ESM major, there was a huge emphasis on material science. So it's very helpful. As I've stepped away from product level stuff, I think, I completely agree with Brent. I think having an engineering background gives you a really good ability to pivot into the financial aspect of running a business, which is really, really critical. I think one of the key things early on is to kind of get a good understanding of how finances work for a startup. It's an easy area to make a lot of mistakes that are painful down the road.
Sure. And Jordan, we might ask you to just double check your microphone there a little bit.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, we were getting some feedback. And then Marcus, help us or remind us what your engineering degree was in and how your education has helped you as a chief technologist and the founder at Keys.
Well, I have a undergraduate degree in computer science and a graduate degree in essentially an interdisciplinary program. It's information networking, computer engineering, and actually business as well. And so both of those helped in maybe a slightly different way, in that the master's degree helped because it had the additional business focus, did help with the focusing on, or actually being able to explore more entrepreneurial activities. But the undergraduate in computer science and computer engineering also helped. Just having various, being exposed to various different, well, as every degree, like or as every engineering degree, you can look at different focus areas of that science, and being able to just to pivot and take it in one direction or another, I think was very helpful.
And Marcus, I'm going to ask you, since you had the postgraduate work, has there been any lifelong learnings, kind of along the way, whether it's any type of certificates or any type of other professional development, perhaps that you sort of latched onto, or that you felt was a value to your leadership role there?
From the degree, or just in general, this just post undergraduate study, you're saying?
Yeah, just in general. Yeah.
Well, the degree itself helps, and I think that there's studies that sort of say that you have undergraduate and a master's helps supplement that a lot, whereas when you get to sort of PhD work, that's very, very focused. So that makes you an expert in a specific item that you'd really want. So that's sort of the trade-off. So if you know exactly where you want to go, then yes, you get a PhD, or you spend years or a decade getting a PhD, but then you are the expert in that one field. Whereas master's programs are very much help with the different possibilities out there that would tie into entrepreneurship, because you're always looking at new ideas and, well, what could you do next? And what problem is there to solve? In the engineering aspect, but then relating that to entrepreneurship, like starting your own company, for example. As far as beyond master's degrees, sometimes it'll be industry specific, and by industry, I'm thinking along the lines of certain certifications that actually in the government arena I know are very important, that may or may not be, it might not be the same in other industries. So I'm thinking of the PMP, the project management professional, right, which is one thing that's for at least some government work is very required. Whereas I would think maybe our other panelists would agree that agile software development is a bigger focus and sort of more of the startups,
Gotcha.
and coming more into government, but that's been a sort of a progression over time.
Yeah, great answer. I appreciate that. The next question, I'm going to start out with Jordan, because I actually know this story very, very well, but I think it gives Jordan an excellent chance to share with our viewers here and our attendees. But Jordan, how did you get the idea or concept for your business, and what motivated you to turn this idea into a business?
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Glad that you remember the story. So, my co-founder and I, David, started the business in 2015 as a response to his hit and run crash at the intersection of Park and Diamond in Philadelphia. So we were both juniors in our engineering program at the time, and she was hit by a car and suffered a traumatic brain injury and was in a coma for 4 months. She was not wearing a bicycle helmet. And, we kind of asked ourselves, what can we do to prevent other families from being in this position? And we came to find out that bicycle helmets are 90% effective at reducing the probability of a traumatic brain injury, and less than 3% of vehicle miles traveled for the age group that she was in at the time were helmeted. So we decided to make a collapsible bicycle helmet that looked like a normal baseball hat so people would wear it. And 5 years later, here we are. I think we've sold 40,000 pre-orders or so at this point in time, and are looking to ship them by the end of the year, hopefully.
Yeah, passionate about a problem, right?
For sure.
Brent, same question. How did you get the idea or concept for Tably, or even your new PPE? I think the PPE one we can figure out, but certainly for Tably, what motivated you to turn this idea into a business, Brent?
Yeah, my co-founder at the time, Wendy, had brought this idea to us around table of making it easier for diners to contact their servers. And at some point, the idea felt like it just felt right to me, you know, kind of in your soul, that it was something that the world needed, as something that spoke to me as somebody, you know, not known for an abundance of patience. So the idea that I felt like it's a product that I would use and really like, and one of those products where you say, you know, why didn't this exist? I feel like we all, you know, anybody who has a string of wanting to invent things or bring out new products, you know, a couple times a week, even I'll see things where I'll say, damn, that was good. Like, why didn't I come up with that? You know? And I felt like it was one of those ideas. So I guess it really hit a string with me from that perspective. And then, like you said, the PPE thing is sort of a necessity is the mother of invention. You know, we had a restaurant technology startup. We were doing well. And not only did they shut down restaurants, but they shut down the part of the restaurant that our technology was supporting. So again, a testament to, you know, quick decision making, understood what we were good at, the connections we had, and you know, turn that into another business. So hoping the restaurant business still turns back on, but for now we'll stick with the mask until that happens.
Right. Nice story. Marcus, how did you get the idea for Keys? Sounds like it's a very technology driven, but I don't want to make assumptions. So help us understand that. What motivated you to turn it into a business?
Well, some of it is identifying an underserved community or underserved customer or a target market, underserved market, probably a better way to say it, which is interesting because in the federal space, you have a lot of, I'd say, large companies that support the federal government, various federal agencies. And I, in my previous employment, I was privileged to work with multiple agencies on different sort of engineering projects. And a lot of times it's with that, it's engineering puzzles, because unless you're, again, a huge corporation, you're more helping the government evaluate these technologies. And so doing that as a separate, as a small business, actually has a lot of benefits, and that you can focus in on both supporting some of these innovations, but also coming up with new software that addresses, you know, the specific needs of one agency that's trying to apply, I want to say, consumer technology, but doesn't necessarily want to say, okay, well, I need to buy 1 million of these. So it's this smaller market that, if you can innovate in these areas, that it can really help out these agents, help out the government do its business.
Excellent. I like that. Yeah, I mean, when you talk about unmet needs or underserved, that's the role of entrepreneurs, right? To figure it out. We've got some outstanding questions in the chat box. So I'm gonna pull some of these student questions. One from Stephen here, and I'm gonna look to Brent to answer it first. What motivated you to pursue entrepreneurship as opposed to a normal job? I mean, we hear stories of eating ramen noodles for like 3 years or something like that, right? So sometimes it's not necessarily the glory days that we see. So what motivated you to pursue entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I had worked for 10 years for 2 different publicly traded companies, you know, and I was always outperforming a lot of my peers in terms of my, you know, performance scorecards and hitting all the metrics and so forth. But it seemed like every year there was another excuse from senior management as to why we, you know, our bonuses weren't quite as good, or, you know, yeah, your business did great, you did awesome, congratulations, but the guys on the other side didn't do so well, so we're gonna cut everyone's bonuses in half and only go with a 3% raise or 2%, whatever it might be. So I mean, I had a steady job, but I just felt like it was easy, and I was just kind of spinning my wheels. And I'm also a person who's, you know, just being honest, financially motivated, and I could never see myself, you know, reaching the heights that I wanted to, you know, at the speed I wanted to. So all that kind of rolled into one. And at some point, you know, as you get older, you get your confidence gains, and you started looking around saying, you know, all these guys are running businesses and doing great things financially and otherwise, and for the community and whatever it might be. I just felt like it was, at some point in like 2016, the switch kind of flipped in my head, and I'd made up my mind, unbeknownst to my employer, that I was going to start pursuing, entrepreneurial ventures, with a lot of vigor. And I thankfully, I built up enough of a nest egg that I didn't really have to do the ramen thing. But there were a lot of long nights and weekends. So, I mean, you can do it either way, right? You can drop everything, cold turkey and just go all in, go ramen mode. Or I think you can work extra hard on nights and weekends and still reduce your risk, on the back end, if something were to go wrong. So it's not right for everybody, but for me, I wasn't ready to go full 100% no parachute, risk, but there was a lot of hard work involved with it.
I always think this is a great question because it's unique to each person, but each perspective kind of helps others to understand. So Marcus, normal job versus entrepreneurship. Why?
I think it definitely is a leap of faith, like that you have to go and to go in the ramen analogy there. You have to be able to have a number of months where you will have no income, because it's just you're going out and you're trying to generate a living revenue to support the work that you're doing, that that you have to believe in your product. It's like, I think I can make a difference and help people with this item, with this service, etc. But then you have to actually have a way to sell it to sustain that I want to say that development or that mission. So the choice, I know it helps if you have a spouse with a full-time income as well. But it's getting established, getting off the ground, and maintaining things. That's, I guess, one of the, you have to be in that position or be willing to make that sort of leap, and then either have the nest egg, as you mentioned, the ramen angle, or have, if you have a two-person household that has income coming in other ways, then you can sort of do that and then start really exploring those opportunities.
Yeah, that's great. Good planning, right, from everyone. Jordan, I'm going to switch the question here on you, just because I think, when you talked about your and David's, the reason why you have Park and Diamond, I think that sort of tells the story of why you chose entrepreneurship. So let's talk about Park and Diamond and the product that you have. And there's a great question here. What were the first steps to take once you have an idea for a business or an entrepreneurial pursuit? So kind of what those first steps look like, and then actualizing your idea. How did you get through that?
I think that's a great question. I think in retrospect, it's almost the hardest to answer on this side of the table. It's been, such a long time since we were there. I mean, believe it or not, the first step was quite literally a shrug of the shoulder in Entrepreneurship Club to enter a pitch competition for $1,500, which we ended up winning and gotten $1 bills. So the slips on our corporate bank account, there's 1,499 $1 deposits from an ATM, and one of the bills was too ripped up. And so the ATM ended up not taking it. I think in retrospect, the first steps really should be file for a legal entity. I think it really depends on what kind of business you have. If you think you're going to go the institutional venture route, definitely do a C Corp. There's a really great small business tax exemption that, I'm sure the E-Club and other resources at Virginia Tech can walk you through. Definitely get your financial system in order, like track of your expenses. I can't tell you how annoying it is to go back to handwritten notes from 2015, 5 years ago, figure out what, we spent money on. And, the reality of it is that when it's the first few months, things are sketchy. No one is going to understand what you're doing. You probably don't even know at the end of the day exactly what you're doing. You're in a mode where you are being hyper aware to how people are reacting to what you say you're going to do. And I think it's very different when you're a student entrepreneur. We started the business when we were juniors in college, We didn't have a need for an income. We didn't have, that time pressure pushing us to make ends meet. And we definitely did the ramen thing. I mean, we lived in our office in the CRC. And so we were able to move at a slightly slower pace, be extraordinarily fine-tuned on the problem that we were solving. We were very fortunate that we had that side of the equation figured out. And the rest of it really was, how do we take off-the-shelf solutions, build the minimum amount of IP, and get that to a place where we could commercialize a product. In retrospect, and I'll say this just really quickly, I know I've taken a minute on this question, but in retrospect, I really do not think that we needed to build as much of a technical moat as we did. I think the advice I'd give to myself as a student entrepreneur, as a student engineer, was that the reality of the world is it is a lot less of a proprietary world than you would ever imagine. And
Agreed.
being so hyper-focused on building a really proprietary, novel, patentable product pigeonholes you to spend an absolute ridiculous amount of money on product development. I mean, I'm sitting here saying, it's a lot of money. I mean, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees alone to commercialize a safety product that's regulated. We've got 8 patents in China, in the EU. I mean, it's like, it's definitely something that drains your ability to be nimble, to follow lean entrepreneurship, to get money into the business early on. And it's 5 years later. I'm not exactly certain that it's worth it, to be honest with you. I mean, check in with me in like another 3. but hopefully we're doing $10 million or more a month in revenue and maybe sold the business. But at the moment, it doesn't seem like it was worth the sweat equity we put into the IP early on, as compared to getting to market quicker with a more flexible solution.
Yeah, well, that's what we love about these types of panels, right? We get some transparency and honesty and each perspective. And so, Brent, how did you initially start the process of your, trying to actualize your idea? And another great question here is, when did you start to feel like there was this cycle of failing, which, we always say fail fast, fail forward. We learn from our failures. And so kind of walk us through your journey.
Yeah, just real quick, I touch on echo what Jordan said. Yeah, I mean, IP is like, it sounds cool and everything, but it's incredibly pain in the ass to get and extremely expensive. And then it's like, shit, we got all this IP. Now the product has to do good. You know what I mean?
Right.
One thing we did, I guess we kind of circumvented the system a little bit, but we just kept re-upping a provisional patent every year, just so we could say patent pending, which fends off 90% of the people. I think the other thing that Jordan touched on briefly, and by no means am I saying Jordan's doing the wrong thing. His product's a lot cooler than ours, and it's something that China could knock off in 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Not 5 minutes, but like every good product in the US that's a physical product, you always have to be looking over your shoulder. We've seen it time and time again for China to come in and stick it on the market that's half as good, but a tenth of the price. So yeah, I agree. Be very careful with what you're patenting. And a lot of products, you're just better off doing it. The other thing that I know, it's not, again, not pertaining to the question, Ron, but that I went through a lot early. It's like, hey, who can I trust to tell my idea about? You know what I mean? And it's like, no, like tell as many people about your idea, because it makes it real. There's a lot of people that have more experience and a lot smarter than you, and you want that advice early. And the other thing is, you'll realize in 10 years that 95% of people in the US and the world are just lazy. And the chances of somebody taking your idea and actually starting a company, because it's a huge pain in the ass to start a company, the chances of them doing that and you looking back being like, I shouldn't have told my neighbor about my idea, and now he's a millionaire and I'm not, like, I'm not gonna say it's impossible, but it's extraordinarily unlikely. So share your idea and don't be so worried about, somebody down the street stealing your idea. So sorry, Ron, what was your question after that?
Yeah, no worries.
I'll get off the soapbox.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And quite frankly, I think you just open it up to some of the resources we have here at Virginia Tech, right? The Apex Center and our Kickstart programs and the Entrepreneurial Challenge. A lot of students will say, I don't want to do that because I've got to share my idea. Jump in and get in.
Jump in.
Arena.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, so the question is, as far as your journey with your startup is, how did you start actualizing the idea? I mean, what did it take to figure out that, okay, this is going to work? This is where we want to go.
Yeah, I mean, again, with Jordan's point, he's a little, sounds like a little worried that, oh shit, maybe we spent, a lot of time and money and equity on sweat equity in the patent. I think we spent too much time on product design for Table E. I mean, it's a product that it's a button. For those of you who haven't looked it up, it's a button that sits on your table at a restaurant. You press the button when you want a server. The server gets notified on a smartwatch to come over and help you. In my case, bring me another beer. And then we have some back end kind of fancy analytical data. It's not as fancy as we try to make it look. But we spent a lot of time like literally worrying about like the physical design of the product. And then we did a design patent to make sure no one can steal our physical design. And then we did a trademark to make sure no one stole our logo. I think I would have put a lot more of that energy into like lean product development and said, okay, what's the cheapest, fastest possible way that I could get something on the table that would allow a guest to notify a server that they needed something, and let's make sure that people actually want that. Let's talk to people and understand, are they apprehensive about it? Do they like the color? Does it feel right? So I would get into like human actual, let the product go and get into the wild faster and cheaper, as opposed to trying to make the box look beautiful before we actually ever even figured out if guests were going to like it and interact it. Because you can get caught up in your own, idea. You read on entrepreneur.com the top 10 things to do when you start a business, and you get caught up in the, oh, I've got to start the LLC and I've got to book my Twitter page and I've got to make sure no one steals my Snapchat filter for my business. But it's like, shit, get it out in the wild and make sure people are going to pay you for it before you spend a year of your life and, $200,000 of someone else's money and $50,000 of your own,
Yeah, desirability, right? Well, do people even want it? And so the sooner they can touch, feel, smell, taste, the better. So that's a great answer, Brent. Appreciate that. We're going to switch gears a little bit. A lot of times, especially students, but any entrepreneur might have this fear of failure, right? I think a lot of us would raise our hands, fear of failure. And so, Marcus, I'm going to start with you. First, the question is coming from Nick from the audience. Have you ever had a failed business? And if not, what steps do you think are vital to avoid failure?
I mean, I've been involved in the past with startups that, had a sort of a quick rise, and then, the changing economic situation made it not completely go under, but have shed about 2/3 of its workforce. So one thing for example, in the federal space and just entrepreneurship in general, is that you have the product, you have the service, but to get actually a revenue stream to continue developing, to continue with the business, you're constantly going out and in the federal case, it's you're going out and bidding on different contracts and getting into sort of the specifics of, I want to say, the needs on paper, as well as trying to figure out the needs on the back end. I'd say in the commercial space, it's a lot easier if they like your product, and I believe this is some of what you were talking about earlier. It's that if you have the device and you get it out in and show the restaurant, for example, then they'll say, oh yeah, I really want that, and they could turn on a dime and say, all right, yeah, give me a bunch of these next week or next month. I want to order it now. Whereas unfortunately, in the federal space, those procurement cycles are a year or 18 months. They can be really long cycles. So, I mean, so you're out there and you're proposing a lot, and you're not necessarily getting a lot of proposals, acceptance, but that's part of the sort of the business development. And you might have the proper term. It's escaping me at the moment, but it's the pipeline. That you have these like 90% of your possibilities, come down to like 20%, or I might be getting the numbers wrong, but 20% of something you actually really should try to pursue, and then 10% you actually bid on, and like 5% you actually get, or adjust the numbers that appropriately. So there's a lot of failure in there before there's success. Or maybe you're really lucky and you just have success right at the door and you walk out the door, but that's not usually the case, and you have to be prepared for that.
Yeah. So Jordan, I'm going to switch over. Besides the IP piece that you just gave some great advice on, what type of failures or setbacks did you go through, that you and David maybe went through with Park and Dine?
Yeah.
And really, how did you overcome them? We get stronger and better, and we persevere through these things, but not in the moment, right?
Yeah, well, I think the failure question, that's an excellent question to whoever asked it. And you ask 10 different entrepreneurs, you can get 10 different answers. To me, my gut response to that question is, what's failure, right? I think as an entrepreneur, you're given the privilege of getting feedback of who you are as an individual every single day, whether that's from customers, employees, partners, co-founders, investors, whomever else. And that helps you to become a better individual. And, I really think of it more in that light. And, I think, frankly, from a mental aspect, it's setting it up so you cannot fail, right? You are going to face a litany of what seem to be insurmountable issues at a point in time, and having the grit to see through them, step through the problems, not get reactionary, and make short-term decisions with long-term consequences, and provide stability for those who are in the trenches with you throughout those periods of time is really important. You look at our business, we launched our product September 25th, 2018, and we still haven't shipped it yet. Right? We've had a whole litany of issues developing this product in Asia, not the least of which is the fact that, the coronavirus shut down the factory that we were producing in. And, you're gonna face problems that, quite frankly, you're just going to sit there and go, I had no idea this was even possible, that this could go wrong. And I think a lot of it is attitude, ability to manage how you respond and get back up from getting punched. So I think that's, one aspect of it. And the other is that, if you ultimately fail, I think you'd learn more in the last 10% of failure than you would almost anywhere else. You certainly learn a lot less by getting it right on the first try. I could say that for sure. Actually, so much so that I think getting it right on the first try sets you up for a more significant and painful failure than had you just screwed it up in the first place.
Right. Great point. Great point. We've got a question here that's specific to Brent. So Brent, I'm going to turn this one to you. This is from the audience. This student has a couple of ideas in the biomedical engineering field, which is pretty impressive. And may want to start a company or apply for patents. And there's an assumption here that maybe you went through the FDA regulatory process during COVID for your PPE.
Yeah, we did.
Talk through that. I think that's an awesome question.
Yeah, the FDA, hopefully there's no FDA personnel on the phone or married or someone's parents. The FDA process is an absolute bureaucratic nightmare, like everything else with the government, if I'll be frank. Half the auditors are working off of different SKUs and different specs than the other half, and one auditor will tell you one thing and the next auditor will tell you something else. So it's kind of like getting a patent. It's an absolute nightmare, and it requires some other firm that used to work there to pay them to get you through in the same way you'd pay a law firm to navigate the legalese of it. So like anything, it's time consuming, it's difficult, and it goes back to what Jordan was saying, just grit and problem solving really to get through it. So it's kind of like eating an elephant. You would never think you could do it, but you just got to start with one bite. So yeah, it's not going to be fun, but if you want to sell something to hospitals and make any sort of medical claims, you have to go through it. So set aside $30,000 to $50,000 and a good 60 hours of your time, and some gray hairs, and get a bunch of wine, and 3 months later you hopefully you'll get through it.
Patience and perseverance, right?
That's right.
Yep. All right, Marcus, how did you validate your ideas, and what was the timeline from idea? Because we can sit around with Post-it notes and a whiteboard, and we can storyboard all day long, but how did you get from that idea to product stage?
Well, some of it is previous work, again, in the federal government space, and in previous essentially research work, if that, because there's different pockets of the federal government that do that try to advance their technology research in a small way. So not the billion-dollar contracts, not the multi-million-dollar contracts, but in the roughly in lower than that. And I saw time and time again, the desire to try to do something sort of quickly and using using consumer technologies and applied to software, but applied specifically to a government need, and there weren't too many people doing it. So some of it is I had sort of I'll say sample applications, but they weren't really being picked up by it wasn't of the size that the larger consulting firms would want to do. And so that's how I found my sort of corner of the world that other people play in as well. But, doing that, but also navigating, I want to say the different interesting things of the how to work with the federal government, as you were just, Brent, you were just talking about. That's an additional skill that I think I picked up in working for a larger company in the area for a number of years first.
Gotcha. So yeah, I think it does help to have some expertise. Brent, 10 years, right, before trying to do it. Marcus, very similar. Jordan, you and David, a little bit different. And so you've sort of answered this question, because I think you started in 2015. Here we are in 2020. So sort of in this 5-year journey. But the question is probably applicable for you, is how did you validate the ideas? So you wanted to do a bicycle helmet. Was there 3D printing? Was there duct tape and styrofoam? How did you go through it?
There was a lot of duct tape. There was a lot of 3D printing. There was a lot of, two college-age guys learning how to use a sewing machine, for sure. So look, I think the way we validated this is, one, we did customer discovery from day one, and I'll totally plug Sean Collins and Derek at Apex. We went through, or at least I went through most of the Apex courses, and customer discovery is key. Don't even start anywhere other than doing customer discovery. That's it, right? And just know that people are really bad at telling you what they want. Like, that is the first thing, that people are exceptionally poor communication what they actually would like. And so I think that one of the critical things you learn in how to conduct customer discovery interviews is, how do you ask non-leading questions that don't bias the output of the answer? Because you, as the interviewer, obviously you're like, hey, I just came up with this really cool idea for a bicycle helmet. I want everybody to buy it. And we also had the opportunity to work with Dr. Geller in the psychology department on the psychology of safety. He was, of course, involved in getting safety belts into cars. And so, between the combination of taking the psychological approach and the entrepreneurial approach of looking at customer discovery, we found that there was a large appetite for ultra-portable bicycle helmets. And that actually was evenly split, 30-30-30, in so many words, between portability, looks, and comfort. And that, the market was underserved in that aspect, as nobody had taken all three of those factors. And of course, there were collapsible helmets that predated us. There were comfortable helmets that predated us. And I don't really think that there were many aesthetically appealing helmets that predated us. But, of course, people dress up in Lycra and wear that on the weekend. So, there's that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Sure.
Brent, I know you're sort of in the B2B world, working with restaurants, but now you got this PPE. But got a good question here from Zachary. Have you approached marketing and advertising, any type of Google, Microsoft ads? So sort of bringing the marketing element into your entrepreneurial approach. And if not those, perhaps how have you marketed your product?
Yeah, we've done some marketing with Table E. We've done some marketing with the masks. The brand is called a Mirror Shield for the mask. We did a short TV commercial in the Tidewater area a couple months ago. I guess from marketing perspective, it's such a huge subject. It's hard to even try to break it down. But I guess I would say be very lean with it until you're sure you know what you want and who your audience is. Like, don't just sign up for Google AdWords just because you want to try to get clicks. Be very clear, to Jordan's point about knowing who your customer is. Like, if you know exactly who your customer is, then figure out where they're hanging out digitally or otherwise, and then actually target a message specifically to them. But just throwing money at Google or Facebook and carpet bombing, a bunch of people that may or may not be interested in your product is a waste of money. And you guys will find out when you get into more of this stuff that the better your ad performs, the more people that like it, the cheaper it actually is to reach eyeballs. So if you're throwing out a bad ad at the wrong people, you're just got to throw good money out the window. So I think, and also a lot of times if people ask me like, oh, why'd you call it Table E? Like, that sounds weird. And I'm like, does the name really even matter? You know what I mean? Like, Amazon is a river in Africa, Apple is a fruit. Like, we know the names because the company makes great products. So like, don't spend your life trying to figure out if your name is right or if the URL is right, or should I end it in .com or .io? Like, that shit doesn't matter. Just sell a really good product and listen to your customers, and all that stuff will come later.
Yeah, great point. Just real quick, Jordan did mention the Apex Center, and I put the website in the chat box. Definitely check it out. That is a great resource for the students here at Virginia Tech. Sean and Derek and the entire team there. Get involved. There's a newsletter you can sign up for. They have monthly events, and I strongly encourage you to do that. Virginia Tech has made significant investments, and you should definitely take advantage of those. Marcus, my question here, a lot of times we talk about opportunity cost as entrepreneurs, right? We can do everything ourselves. And to Zachary's question here, did you personally handle marketing and advertising, or did you hire someone else for that job? And you can switch it, whether it's marketing, advertising, maybe it's your finance or your accounting or your CPA.
I did most of it myself, and yeah, to some degree, I regret doing that, because I mean, it's the more you take on, you'll feel like, especially when you start your own thing, that you need to take on everything, and sometimes you're in the end the one responsible, but you sort of have to. It's better to pick and choose what you want to focus on, because they're not coming. Your customers or potential customers won't come to you because you have good HTML skills or you have good social media skills. That's not what you're providing. That's not the service you're providing. I mean, unless of course you're really providing a service, but for the most part you're not. So you need to try to focus on the core mission, and that can be a challenge because I've seen this with some colleagues who've started their own business or their own law practice, and he was showing me all the really cool HTML like scrolling web page when he talked about his law firm, and I'm like, I mean, yes, it's an exercise in technology, but I don't know. There could have been maybe other things that he could focus on. Although it was a really nice website.
Yeah, that's great. Jordan, help us understand, when did you and David decide that it was too much to do everything, right? Two engineers trying to do finance and accounting and marketing. When did you take the time to then start to seek outside expertise?
Sure. Yeah, we made our first full-time hire in 2017 after we raised our seed round, and it was, a guy, Keith, who's still with the business, and his background was in marketing. I mean, he was on the founding team of USA Today. He sold paper ads, had a great career in that industry, and so he was on the other side of the table. I think you have to be very self-aware about what you're good at. I think a lot of being successful in these types of roles is understanding what's working and what's not, taking your emotions and your preconceived notions out of it, and also thinking about what is the most expensive skill set that you can teach yourself so you don't have to pay somebody else to do it. So for example, it's incredibly expensive to hire investment banker, people with an investment banking background to do financial models for you. That's incredibly expensive. And if you want to raise institutional capital, you have to show up with a fully fledged out three-statement model, and basically go through and explain to them how you are going to be profitable at some point 5 years in the future, even though absolutely nothing on that piece of paper is ever going to happen. That is the reality of raising institutional capital. So that was an area that I did not have an expertise in, that I decided that it made more sense to teach myself than it did to hire someone else. When it came to the marketing side of things, we spent probably somewhere between $600,000 and $1 million in ads. I have absolutely zero idea how to buy a Facebook ad. I couldn't even tell you where to start. I could probably log in to our admin portal, but 0% chance I would know what I was doing. We hired a team that was very experienced doing product launches. They were amazing. I would highly recommend them. And I think that's a great example of leverage, which is, put your personality, put your expertise on the output of your customer discovery, what you know your market to be, and leverage the expertise that others can have that you have the fortune of being able to pay for.
Excellent. All right, Brent, what would you say are the biggest challenges entrepreneurs face in their first years? And I'd like to see some specifics from all of our panelists here. How did you tackle those challenges?
Oh man, specifics. I was going to actually not give you any specifics. My first inclination was to say the biggest challenge is different for everybody, but the biggest challenge is that the sheer volume of small challenges, and assume what would appear to be insurmountable number or level of challenges. So just be prepared for a ton of problems that you need to fix quickly and logically. Biggest challenge in the first year is getting whatever product that you want to sell, whether it's a physical software product or otherwise, getting that to the point where you can get it into a potential customer's hands to start giving you feedback. Getting past that initial hurdle is big. And then shortly after that, depending on the financial leanings of your spouse, your ability to eat ramen or the nest egg you've built is inevitably comes, holy shit, we're spending way more money way faster than we ever anticipated. How do we get more? So, it's usually product and then money. And if you can get past both of those in the first year or two, you got a pretty good shot.
Love that. Yeah, we don't know what we don't know, right? So as soon as we can get the product in their hands, that's great.
That's right.
Yes. What were some of your challenges, and how did you get through those?
Some of the challenges were identifying the proper technology to respond to some of the federal government's or other organizations' needs in terms of their actual sort of requisitions and postings, because they have very sort of fixed cycles on that, and just submitting the paperwork for that. It's another level of I don't want to say exactly, but it's not it's not pleasant. So doing that can be a challenge. And then when you scale up to, like, I want to say larger contracts too, like that could be, going for most recently a very large contract that related to PPEs and telemedicine. That was an experience in itself, and getting multiple partners for a large, like tens of $1 million, like a proposal, a proposal team. So that it's an interesting challenge, an interesting experience doing that.
Yeah. I'm going to switch a little bit and talk about team building, because there's 2 or 3 questions in the chat box. We actually had some prepared questions on this. And Jordan, I'm going to start with you. What makes a good partner? And then how do you go about searching for a team that has same values as you, or that you would want to, you're going to spend a lot of time, right? 60, 70, 80 hours a week. You're going to face some troubles. You're going to face some challenges. How do you find the right people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, the key takeaway, I actually said this to one of my board members today, is that the more I sit in the seat, the more I realize it's all about the people that you have. I mean, it is the number one thing that's driving value for your business. And what's interesting is, as a founder, you've got the privilege to bring people into your business and really benefit from them comprehensively in a way that you would not be able to do, kind of in a traditional corporate setting. In terms of finding the right people, first of all, partnership is about compromise. And you have to understand that people are who they are, and they will only become more of themselves when pushed to the limit. And you absolutely have to be willing to accommodate your partner in business, whether that be a good thing or a bad thing. That's the reality of the situation. And when it comes to finding team with good value, like good values and are the right fit, you're going to get it wrong 50% of the time. That's just, you have to hold yourself to a standard where you are incredibly transparent about your process. You're transparent about individuals' performance. You're consistent about providing feedback. You have to absolutely communicate what is expected of people, what is expected of the team, what is expected of specific circumstances, and hold yourself to that same standard, if not to a higher one. I think at the end of the day, these interpersonal skills are what are going to take you from being, a moderately successful business, I think, to, a significantly more successful business. At the end of the day, I think back to a lot of the wins that we've had, and they were all driven by being able to make connections from people we either hired or, decided to not hire, who were extraordinarily jazzed about our business and wanted to help. I think that we're fortunate. We're a business that's, not only has a financial incentive, but also is doing real good in the world. And I think that, there's a bit of a selection bias for the world that we exist in. But at the end of the day, I think it all comes down to people. It really does.
Well, and I strongly encourage the students who are obviously our attendees this evening to engage, network, and grow. I mean, starting at age 18, 19, build your LinkedIn, get to know one another, because you don't know who that student you're sitting next to ends up, where they're at in their future that you could help with. Guest speakers, the folks that are on the panel tonight, connect with them, right? And then certainly any alumni, faculty, and staff. I think that's an important piece. Brent, how do you find people? And I'm also going to expand a little bit, people for your team and or resources. How do you know you're picking the right resources that you're going to bring into your organization?
Yeah, I've hired a lot of people, and in my mind, the ones I've had that I've been happiest with, or had least amount of trouble, is I always hire on personality first. Everyone's got resumes. Everyone's graduated college. Really don't necessarily care about your GPA unless you're doing something highly technical. As long as somebody has, the minimum, a solid or minimum necessary kind of like mental capacity or skill set necessary to learn the job. Once that box is checked, I'm more interested with somebody who is positive, has a great attitude, is kind to, themselves and to the people that are around them. So I always love to hire people that I'd like to spend 6 or 8 hours a day or more with, assuming that they've got the minimum technical requirements. And there's few jobs that, in a startup company that require a huge technical hurdle, unless you're getting into a CTO role or something like that. So that's as far as interviewing, that's what I look at. But as far as finding good people, yeah, you made a good point, Ron. I mean, networking, instead of watching Netflix Friends for the 37th time, go to that happy hour for entrepreneurs, or go sit around the Apex Center for 2 hours and just talk to somebody who's there. I mean, it's unbelievable how you look back over your career and you're like, I can't even tell you how many hundreds of people I met, but like, I never would have thought that this guy would have been my, one of my best partners. I don't want to hog up too much time, but my partner currently in the mask business was a customer of mine 5 or 6 years ago, and we always kind of like gelled on the same wavelength. And unbeknownst to me, he had kind of put aside in his mind that he'd like to do business with me one day, and I kind of did the same thing. And it was like, who would have thought that this guy who I met through a friend of a friend and drove out to see one day in Virginia Beach would now be a business partner when we're making who knows how many millions of masks a week or whatever it is. So yeah, be kind to people, meet a lot of people, and hire people that you'd like to trust and hang out with.
Awesome. I love that. Marcus, how do you go about finding the right people?
some of it is I want to say conferences, technical conferences, at least in the government space, where you have different, I want to say, domains. Like, so if this one will be about public safety, this one will be about transportation, this will be about air transportation. The FAA has one of the larger conferences that are aviation themed, Smart Cities conference that goes across domains. Like, you go there and you can see what different products are there, what different solutions, and potential partners there too. That's one thing, just to going and you can see what lies in your business arena, or for students, where do you want to go, what interests you, and what things could you either become the expert in or keep track of. And then when an opportunity happens, for example, if you're working for some other, mid-size or large company, you could still be like, okay, well, hey, I know this, I bring this additional thing to the table. Hey, did you hear about A, B, or C, this new innovation or business opportunity? That's one angle. Another angle is, for example, I've been a member of a standards body over the last decade, geospatial standards. And in that, you get to know a lot in helping develop standards or helping work through some of these issues. You get knowledge for yourself, but also you meet a lot of other companies and other professionals who are trying to do this sort of joint, international mission of like coming up with data exchange standards or whatever arena that you happen to be in. And you get to know them professionally, and they might move companies, but they'll still be there, and they still be somebody who you could potentially tap for a business opportunity, another company or another individual. So
I like that. We've come up on the hour, but I'm going to ask one more question. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and we'll finish up here in just a couple of minutes. But I'm going to sort of go around the room. Jordan, a couple of things here. Besides networking and engaging, if you could give yourself advice as a college student, what advice would that be? And then the second part of the question would be, did we miss anything tonight that you really would like for the students to know?
Yeah, it's a great question. What would I tell college age? I don't know if that's a tough question.
What would you tell Jordan in 2015?
Yeah, that it'd all be
Be
okay.
honest. Be honest.
I think that don't drink as much. No.
Yeah.
No, look, I think that one of the things that I wish I could have told myself back then is it's all going to be okay. I think that particularly our generation, and of course the students are going to laugh at me and say they're not part of my generation, is that we're really hard on ourselves. I had really high expectations for what we were going to achieve. And, it really felt like we were never moving fast enough. It was always, when I get to the next stage, everything will be okay. And, it just got ridiculous to a certain point. I mean, BMW had invested in our company. It was like, the next morning, when I get to the next stage, it's good. Now I just need $1 million in revenue. Once we have in revenue, it was like, now we got to get to 10. And I think just, kind of giving yourself a moment to say, look, it's going to be okay. The point of this exercise is not to amass, significant wealth. It's not to do any of those things. The point is to see what you're capable of, and you have to be aware of your limits, make sure that you've got balance in your life. And so I think I would have, optimized things a little bit different, in the years following, my college experience, and at the end of my college experience, knowing that. And then in terms of missing anything, I mean, really, I think at the end of the day, Brent said a great point. You never know where your opportunity is going to come from. I think the number one thing that I would recommend to student entrepreneurs is be humble, be aware that the person you're talking to might give you $1 million. They might give you 10. They might be your co-founder for, the business that takes you, to what you're trying to achieve in life. You have no idea. Be very aware of the fact that while you're incredibly capable, and there's no reason why you should caveat any statement with a statement I'm not a marketing person. I'm not an engineer. I'm not this. Nobody's anything. Just do it. It doesn't really matter. Is that you never know who could make the difference for you in your professional life. And I think that's a very important mindset to have as you step through your experience as a young entrepreneur, as a student.
Yeah, well said. All right, Brent, look in the mirror. What do you tell Brent, college student? It's been a few years. And then what did we miss tonight?
Yeah, Jordan made a nod to it. You don't have to go out every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday in college. So my GPA reflected that in chemical engineering, unfortunately. No, I would have said, my dad always stressed to me like how important networking was, and just like getting out there and being involved and engaged with different things. Like I wish I kind of started my entrepreneurial career when I was 30-ish, and I wish I would have, like, I look back at you guys, I want to use the word kids, but it's like, Jesus, I felt like I was in college like not long ago, but like, I wish I would have started being an entrepreneur when I was 18 or 22. You know what I mean? I wish I would just jumped in and not been like, I've got to get a job at a company, like my dad did. So not that I didn't learn an incredible amount from working for giant companies. You really do learn the right way to do things, especially procedurally. But I wish I would have been more involved and knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur sooner. So I wish I would have gone to more of those, of entrepreneurial events and those things that weren't required for class and things like that. So that's definitely looking back. And then as far as like what we missed, I mean, honestly, like, just if you want to start something, it's going to be really hard. It's going to take an incredible amount of time, but just do it. Just go start it. You're probably going to fail, but you will learn an incredible amount from that failure. And if you don't fail, then fantastic, even better. But don't just talk about the day that you're going to start it, just friggin' start it one night, and you'll wake up in 2 months and you'll be like, holy shit, I've got a company now. And here we go, but you got to start it.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere, right? All right, Marcus, what advice would you give yourself as a college student?
Yeah, I would agree about starting earlier. Like I felt like it would have been a lot more interesting starting the earlier I started. But yes, you do learn a lot, and life comes at you too as you're going along. But when you exit your academia and you go out into these different jobs and working for larger companies, look at what they're doing, look at sort of the process that they're doing for their business, and see if there's something that's not being served that you could serve, that ideally that your company you're working for is not trying to serve too, but that, because a lot of times you have to know when you start your company, know what you want to do. And larger companies also tend to know what they want. They're not going everywhere. So being able to recognize that earlier on, I think, and being able to sort of jump on those opportunities, I think would have been what I would tell my younger self.
All right. And what did we miss anything tonight?
I would I'd say that you have to, when you're choosing sort of a path to go down in entrepreneurship, there's definitely a difference between commercial and, let's say, public or government work, and you can do it in both, or rather, it is possible to be entrepreneurial in government work, is what I more probably should say, but there is just like a next level of paperwork involved. So you have to figure out what if that's your thing or not, because I know a number of entrepreneurs who decided, forget this government stuff. I'm just gonna go and actually and sell to the whole world as opposed to a certain sector. So you have to, want to do that mission, if that's the case. But I don't know if the other folks here would say about government versus non-government. I mean, which I'm sort of assuming that at least a lot of the folks here might work in the DC area, and when you're working in the DC area, it's different than working elsewhere in the country.
Well, that's a good wrap. I think you're right. The DC area and the Beltway is a little bit different than others. I definitely want to thank all the students that came out tonight. You're making the first step by just being here and listening and being a part of this. You should give yourself credit for that. Check out the Apex Center. Check out the E-Club, the Entrepreneurship Club. They're at the CRC. I want to thank Ryan Nidek. What an awesome job Ryan did. We certainly give an applause to him for organizing this entire event. He's a very humble guy. He doesn't take much credit, and we should definitely thank him. And then I would be remiss if I don't say a very special thank you to Jordan, Marcus, and Brent for coming back. This is an up-pro-some moment, and we certainly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules and for being here. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Ryan to kind of close this out tonight.
Yeah, Ron pretty much covered, or Professor Poff rather, pretty much covered pretty much everything that I had to say. I want to thank Marcus, I want to thank Jordan, I want to thank Brent again for doing it, or for coming here today and speaking to all of us, taking time out of their busy schedules. I'd also encourage you to check out the Student Engineers Council website. We have lots of other events, not on our calendar yet. We have an event with Deloitte coming up in a few weeks that we're about to post, and events with a few other companies to be announced. So stay tuned for that, and I hope I will see you guys all again. Have a great rest of your evening.